Welcome to the presentation of Excel and Data Integrity presented by SimInfo Software. I'm Doug Crane. I'm a Senior Sales and Marketing Manager with the company, and I'll be doing the presentation today. We're going to start off with a PowerPoint detailing some information about the application and the company, and then get into an application presentation. So, Excel, the spreadsheet problem, very easy to use, more difficult to control. Sheets are still commonly used in the life science industry. They're very familiar, they're flexible, and used in a variety of different ways. The same ease of use, the same flexibility, the knowledge that we all have worked in Excel, this can also contribute to issues around errors and security and control. Of course, when you're using spreadsheets in support of a GXP process, they become even more critical in terms of those pillars of security, of action, auditing, and controls around those spreadsheets. Now, about this PowerPoint, you're going to see some blue panels. These are just highlighting direct lists from FDA integrity guidance that came out a couple years ago. And if you haven't noticed, by the way, the FDA has updated that data integrity guidance just recently in a new release. Compliance requirements. So when you're working in the CGXP record, each must comply with 20 CFR Part 11, including audit trail, security, and e-signatures. You adhere to the data integrity guidance and also predicate rules. So clearly, complete consistency and accuracy of data is very important. About SimInfo, we pioneered Part 11 compliance for spreadsheets and Access databases over 20 years ago. We have the largest installed base of over 500 clients in 30 countries. Our software is very proven and mature. It's all based, of course, on interaction with our clients and our own individual domain experience. The development team is very strong with over 100 years of total experience. Everything we build has an ISO 9001 certification process, and we do offer 24/7 support. So if you have multi-shifts or other needs that are beyond the normal business hours, we're able to help you with that. Talk a little bit about eInfoTree, the Excel software for Part 11 compliance. The audit trail is one of the key pillars of Part 11, and it's the element that can ensure data integrity and compliance because you're tracking the actions that are taking place in the spreadsheet. So very, very important. Screenshot of the audit trail of eInfoTree Excel module. Of course, what we're trying to track here is timestamp of changes, user who made the change, the type of change, address, the old and new values, a reason field, and signature details. So all of this information is captured into a database from which the information cannot be modified or deleted. It's irrevocable. Now, part of the data integrity guidance is you shouldn't just have an audit trail, but you need to be able to check on it. You need to be able to review it. You need to be able to verify it. And so recommended that you have an easily searchable audit trail. Well, if it's not electronic, it won't be searchable very easy. But of course, we do have, as part of eInfoTree Excel module, we have an electronic audit trail, and you can search on it with high-level filters that we've built into the application, such as the audit trail query builder, where you can create your own reports of changes, where we can give you a graphical view of changes that have occurred in the sheet on a time based. We also have cell revision history, where you can do a search across a particular range of cells, whether it's 1 day or 1 week, 1 month, or even longer, and you'll be able to get results almost instantaneously. So those filtration tools are very important as part of the review process when it comes to the audit trail. A second pillar of CFR 21 Part 11 is the electronic signature. Now, you're to printing out sheets in a paper format and then signing off with data integrity person, or at least signing off with the data entry person, as well as, let's say, a reviewer. And those documents have to be stored and secured and then retrieved when an auditor needs to look at it. It'd be quite cumbersome. The electronic signature allows you to sign off on actions and have that in the audit trail itself. It allows you to be able to apply read-only, view-only, let's say, signatures into the sheet itself, thus sidestepping the paper printout process. So electronic signatures as the second pillar, they're perhaps not as sought after as the audit trail or the security profiles that we can apply, but helpful when it comes to eliminating unnecessary steps that make life more cumbersome both for the business as well as auditors. We have a number of value-add features within the application, one of which is this compare workbooks. You can think of it as a change management tool, but you compare versions of workbooks that are having changes made to them, do a side-by-side comparison. The changes can be highlighted, reports can be printed in a read-only format, and consequently just another way to help you with a review process as changes are going forward within your GMP, GLP, or GCP spreadsheets for that matter. The third pillar is security, and our application eInfotree Excel module helps you greatly with security, because when we control a normal file, a typical Excel file, which we call uncontrolled, and when we apply our controls to it, immediately there is either a read, write, or no access granted to individual groups and users that might be needing to work in that particular workbook. So security can be at the file level, it can be at the cell level, and you can have security for Excel menus other than the menu item that eInfotree Excel module provides as a plugin to Excel. Other value adds, such as we, of course, work with Office 365 if you desire to face in that way with your spreadsheets, or SharePoint as an example. And then we have a number of other value adds. This is a short list of those, but the third one on that list, create remote copies. Typically, not every person involved with the output, a process involving a GXP spreadsheet would necessarily be working within the application. These are perhaps people higher up the compliance chain, but they still need to be kept abreast of changes occasionally. We have a feature called Create Remote Copies. It allows you to create a read-only copy that you can then provide with or without audit trail and directly share it with anyone that's not working directly within the application. Include for eInfotree Excel module, it's an Excel plugin. This is one of the strongest seats, so to speak, as far as the application. It eliminates users having to understand any other application. They simply double-click on Excel, as they always do, and their security profile is verified. And if they have read or write rights, they're granted access to that controlled workbook. So they never have to really learn anything. The business just continues to work as they always do. The tools run with the files. This is highly important. So once again, it makes it both ultimately secure and ultimately flexible, so that files can be moved around. They don't have to live inside another application. In fact, your spreadsheets can stay exactly where they are today, or in a folder right next to where they are today, where users can browse and work in those controlled files. As we say here, controls are embedded in the file and are not dependent on a separate application. Other than that, we integrate, just as a couple other bullets, on a single sign-on. If you're familiar with that, you log on to your network once in the morning, and any other application that you have security on will recognize your security profile and log you in. That's the way with our application eInfotree Excel module. So again, once you're in the system and you have rights to a particular spreadsheet, you can click on it. You will not be prompted for user ID or password. You'll simply be authenticated and logged in. And that final bullet, control Excel menus, is quite important. When you spend a great deal of time validating a spreadsheet and its structure. And you apply our controls to it, so you're living in a 21 Part 11 environment with, obviously, with an electronic audit trail, electronic signatures, and multi-level security. It has to know that users cannot tamper with the other Excel menus unless given explicit permissions to do so. So in this case, we actually control not only our plugin menu, but of course all other Excel menus, maintain the data integrity around the structure and the build of that GXP spreadsheet. There's another application called Excel Validator. We'd like to highlight it. I'm going to do just a few slides on this, and then if time permits, we'll share a little information. But Excel Validator is, as you see here, a visual analysis software. It also is a plugin to Excel, and it's designed, as you might guess, to aid in the validation process, which can be quite cumbersome, time-consuming. People struggle with it all the time. So Validator is really helping you to perform deep dive logic analysis or quality control checks that will help you to facilitate the process of validation and improve the data integrity of the structure and the output of that particular spreadsheet. You're moving along the life cycle to eventually a production spreadsheet. Meaning that you're looking at, let's say, a formula, cell or code analysis. We can generate heat maps. A lot of our features will generate legends, as you see here. And the purpose of this is to bring your eye, the eye of the person doing the validation, to a location within the spreadsheet where you're going to see either confirmation of consistency, or you're going to see reference points to inconsistencies that might require you to repair those or to change those or modify those. So it's very common throughout the application. And this site actually also mentions that we build in some templates into the application that can be used to output data as you need to a design spec or to a QOQ, where ultimately you can finish your validation. So we not only provide you a great tool to be able to help you with the validation, documenting, and making sure you don't miss anything, but secondly, we also provide templates where you can then output or extrapolate the data electronically when you're ready directly into these pre-formatted templates. Another example of a screen where you're doing some formula analysis, and here you can see that, again, we're providing a legend, and those legends will allow the user to focus on things that might need further review. And really the important part, we're not going to point you at things that are all set. We're going to bring your eye to things that maybe are not all set so that you can begin to work with those and make sure they're corrected. And there is a heat map. That's just one of many reports throughout the application. The heat map is really a summary tool looking at both formula and cell analysis and then merging them into one report. So to conclude with Excel Validator, we're generating validation documents in minutes that would take hours or days to create because we've got these built-in templates. And I said you can take your outputs, what you want your final validation checks on, and put that into the IQOQ. You don't have to do more, you don't have to do less, you do just what you want. And that gives you the templated format where you can sign off and re-verify and complete your process. So Excel Validator is an excellent tool, and as I said, it's a plug-in to Excel as well. So basically, both of these tools, which are both part of what we characterize as a cycle management of spreadsheets, validation typically coming before the eInfotree Excel module in terms of its controls around a workbook that's now in production, but we know that both these tools improve productivity, they can improve compliance, and can help reduce costs based on time and man hours on particular tasks. So again, very good tools. And let's go ahead, we're going to pause for a second. I'm going to minimize this screen. We're going to get up to the eInfotree Excel module. Back, and what we're seeing in front of you is essentially the home screen for what we call the administrative module. That's one part of the architecture of eInfotree Excel module. The administrative module is a gatekeeper. It's where we control the files. We essentially keep the configurations and settings, and we put some other tool sets within the admin module as needed, such as configuring of email notifications, etc., based on actions or rules sign-off and electronic signatures, which I'll show you in a little bit. But what we like to do is show you how easy it is to control a file. And once again, a controlled file in our world is one that we've wrapped our software around. Every other Excel file is simply an uncontrolled file from our perspective. So we have Word that I can now control a file that will be used in production. The administrator, I would simply browse to a location on the folder, somewhere in the directory or the drive. I'm going to select a document we use in our demonstrations. And when I click on Convert, it's going to ask me where do I want to put that. Typically, best practice is you put a different location than where your original uncontrolled file is, but we will add a naming convention eInfotree copy of at the front end of every file we control. But of course, at this moment, if you want to apply your own naming conventions, that of course is perfectly fine. So I save it to this location. As soon as I do, it tells our application it's ready to be controlled. In less than 2 seconds, this particular file has been controlled. When I say OK to that, we have a new file here that is controlled. Now, this file already has an irrevocable audit trail associated with it. It has e-signature functionality, and it has security based on file level security in terms of rewrite or no access. Before we leave the admin module, which is, as I say, one part of our architecture, I will show you just one setting to tell how easy it is to work with it. If we go to the file level configuration, it brings us up a number of tabs, but here you see file security, you see the groups that we have as sample groups, and then you see the categories of read, write, or none. We are defaulting to write access for all these groups, but typically best practice says not all the groups would have any access or even some access. So what we'll do is we'll clear, and then we're going to grant to the admin, we're going to give read access into quality control, write access, we're going to save that, and see that now these are the only 2 groups out of 6 that have any rights whatsoever into this particular controlled workbook. So that's a quick demonstration of how easy it is to modify file level security if you choose to do so. We're going to now minimize the admin module. We're going to move over to that controlled file, and there it is there. And when we'll click on it, you're going to see a splash screen, and that's because I have single sign-on turned off on my desktop. They use multiple users in this very simple presentation where I'm logging in and out with different users. So in this case, Mr. Mueller decided that is going to log in to this controlled workbook, which he's kind of curious about. And we see that when he tries to log in, a message comes up and says, you do not have necessary file access permission. That means he doesn't have read rights or write rights. He wasn't part of either of the groups that I assigned rights to. And so again, he knows, well, so I guess I won't be able to take a look at that. And there's no access for anyone that doesn't have rights. No matter where the file is, it's always going to have the controls with it. So now we'll go ahead and we'll log in with a user who does have rights. And I'll share with you, so as a plugin to Excel, you have a tab that appears in the Excel window. And these features that we make available to users, they can be grayed out, they can be hidden. You can make which ones available to which groups you want. So you have the flexibility. But you see one feature is called View Audit Trail. So just a moment remark about the architecture again. Now, I'm sitting at a client machine. This is my desktop per se. And so basically when I logged in, there's an authentication that was based on my rights into the file, but also my rights from this particular machine to be able to work within controlled file. So it was verifying who I am on the network. So now, when I click on View Audit Trail, this particular controlled file is communicating directly with the database, just like the admin module does. The admin module also communicates directly with the database. They're both saving any actions, configurations, changes such as that into this database. The file themselves, the admin module, neither lives in the database. They simply live on a server or on a directory. And so once again, very flexible, but incredibly great controls. So when I click on View Audit Trail, the database to send me the audit trail for this particular file. Well, of course, we just controlled it, so you can see that we have a login successful, but the first one was an unauthorized access by Mr. Mueller. So he doesn't just go ahead and log on to something that he doesn't have rights to, but you can have a ping go to an administrator identifying that there's been an unauthorized attempt, or even if someone tries to get in several times, with their incorrect password. So we have triggers that and action items, all based on email, that can keep stakeholders involved and make sure that everybody's abreast of what needs to be in what file. So I just we'll come back to the audit trail, but I did want to show you those first two entries in that. And as soon as I close it, it goes back to the database. It never lives in the workbook. For that, productivity and performance. Once again, productivity, because you only need to have certain people see that, so you never have to have it in the sheet itself or in the workbook. But from a term of use perspective, if you have an audit trail in your workbook and that audit trail is building up over time, which it can very easily do, you might bog down the performance. So what we do is we just submit it when called for. It's a temporary sheet. When not, we send it back to the database. Works very well. So this user's task is simply to make some modifications. They're going to add some values. We're going to delete some values, make another modification, maybe one more deletion, and they're done. Now, I'm just obviously using a sample spreadsheet that's already got some data in it, but I did want to show how easy that is. So the user is simply making the changes as they require. Now we go back to the audit trail, and there's a series of actions that have occurred. As you can see here, there's been a deletion, a modification, another deletion, an add, delete, modify. And so let's familiarize you a little bit with the audit trail while we're here. So we have e-sign. That is an e-signature. There's a notation in that column, timestamp, time zone. If you're all working in the same time zone on the same controlled spreadsheet, there's no reason for this data. But if you are working different people in different time zones, this helps to keep clear as to when particular actions have taken place, so that you know that if somebody's ahead or behind you, how that all played out. We have the name, we have the address, of course, the cell address, we have the action, the old value, the new value, and you can see that I can size these column headers, the username, and user ID, full username. And then we have a column header for role, reason, and comments. Of course, those are associated with electronic signatures, and then a file path. Down, we have some graphs which just give a percentage of time in terms of users working in the file. And then we have some bar charts which show you how many times a particular action is being used within this control sheet. You'll have the ability to write to a PDF or to a read-only Excel. You can minimize the charts if you would like. You can also word map so that you can read, let's say, a file path more simply. And we have a legend. As you can see here, we can apply different colors to different actions in the way our users tell us that it's very helpful in terms of bringing their eye to particular actions that are taking place within the audit trail itself. And up here, you see we have an icon This on is when you click on it, it brings you directly back to a location within the workbook that's open at present. It gives some information in terms of who did it, when did they did it, what was the action, what was the old value, and what was the new value, a snapshot per se. Feature is probably even more helpful for somebody reviewing data changes or data entry from the audit trail itself. Want to go back to the audit trail, you just click on Back Audit Trail. One point, as long as the audit trail view is open in this controlled workbook, no changes can occur. As you would imagine, that wouldn't be very good if we were allowing changes to occur while the database was open. So anytime you want to make changes to your controlled workbook and you've got the audit trail open, you have to close it and send it back to the database. Then you can resume any activity or work within that controlled workbook. One final thing, here we look at a text item. So if we're basically doing a search, we have a filtration tool right here that does searches. So anything that has an 11 associated with it, unless there's those 3 addresses or this old value, you're going to pick that up. If you want to clear and go back, you do so just by clicking on search with a blank screen. So we have other data review, other filtration tools, which I'll go into in a few moments, but one is very helpful because it's embedded in the actual audit trail itself, so you can use it directly from this location. We have the ability to drag column headers over to the left, and then see you can begin to look at particular items. So in this case, I'm kind of curious what these deletions about. I can then click on the icon. That will take me to a different cell. So you could see how easy it is to work in an audit trail, and this is probably more important for the person who's doing the review and approval than the person doing the data entry. But on the other hand, they may also want to report out on their exact changes that they made. They're all right here. They're all printable as need be. When you want to resume your view, you just drag your column head back, and that's you up into your old view. So very flexible but very secure audit trail that can help you do your business either in terms of reviews or simply checking on changes that have occurred. So this year is all set except for one more action. The SOP requires that they enter an e-signature into the audit trail and into the sheet to verify that these are their actions and they're signing off on it. So we have a tool here called Enter eSignature. When you click on it, it brings up this panel and gives the user a choice of reasons associated with them or globally, make changes, or they can make comments. You have up to 250 characters here. An electronic signature always requires the user ID and password to be entered, with the exception of a continuous session where the user ID will be remembered, but the password will always have to be re-entered. Now, a role, users can have multiple roles, but in this case, we're just working with the data entry role. This user has decided they can either sign off on the worksheet, on the workbook, or on the cell range. So we've been working here in cell range, and just select that, and that gets added to the scope into the audit trail itself. So that anybody doing review up chain of command can easily see where the activity occurred, and you can even isolate that, of course, to the individual cells themselves if the user wanted to take the time to do so. Now, you see here we have Insert eSignature. If the user unchecks this box and accepts this, all the audit trail, all the eSignature data will be entered into that audit trail that we've already seen. But in this case, the SOP calls for not only for the data to be entered into the audit trail, as it always is, but it also, they want to see essentially an eye-readable signature in the sheet itself. And so we'll go ahead and we'll look for location, where we'll place that. We're going to do it here. Typically, it's good, best practice to have a formatted location. And if you don't, that's okay too. But typically, best practice is have a location. So now you can see we have full username, timestamp, and the role of the individual. And if that person had decided, well, geez, I applied that a little too soon, you can't change that because we have a feature that allows the e-signature to be locked down unless a higher power needs to unlock that e-signature. And so in this case, this pop-up is merely just to defeat the user or to alert them there is no password to modify or change that. But you can see, because I haven't applied any particular color font, or if I didn't, there's no locking going on because, again, best practice typically in a review and approval process is someone does data entry, somebody else does review, and then somebody confirms that as a review or even the third level, and ultimately that's the person that gets the locking capability, and I'll show you that in just a few moments. But I did want to jump back before this user leaves the workbook. If you see here, we have our first e-signature, so let's go ahead and explore that. So we have a yes in that column there. We have a timestamp. We have the action is enter e-signature. We have the scope. If you remember, we had that scoping that we added in terms of the locations. So there you see that scoping. And of course, we now have the user ID, the full username, and then we have role, reason, and comments, all searchable. So if we wanted to search on the text of a comment, we can easily do so. And we're searching on made, and we can find that very quickly. So that's the end result for this person. They're going to close out of here. They're going to close out of the controlled workbook and minimize that. And let's go into another value add feature. Now, value add feature is our integration with your Outlook or your email server. And within our application, eInfotree Excel module, you can create triggers based on sign-off, such as what I just did, where the user signed off and then sent a summary email to the next person up the chain, in this case a reviewer, and that person then gets this information. They can then use this information to simulate what they need to do and where they need to go to check anything out based on the scope that we mentioned before. And we'll give a linkage. So the user can just simply click on that link, that hot link, take them directly over to the location where the spreadsheet is. They don't have to browse to it. It'll just take them right to that location. And in fact, if we had single sign-on turned on, it would have looked at this person's authentication. It would have checked with the database, which is that third part of the architecture that we've talked about. The database would confirm this user's read or write rights or any other cell denials or cell allow within this particular workbook and grant them access at the same time that their single sign-on would be confirming that they are who they say they are based on their particular client ID. So, again, since I have multiple users, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to log in with the reviewer. You can see we're now back in that same controlled workbook. Now, the reviewer has some choices. If we open up the eInfotree tab, as you recall in the PowerPoint, we talked briefly about these three filtration tools which we built in, which are above and beyond the search engine that you already saw within the audit trail itself. So if a user in his review or her review capacity simply wanted to look at the changes that have occurred since the last time they were in the workbook, you can see that we have the ability to search on specific actions. You have a date criteria between dates or today, or you can ignore date, or you can do previous days and months. Since we have a very small audit trail, we'll just go ahead and bring that up. It brings us up this pop-up. It is not a printable screen. It's just designed to allow the user to begin the familiarity with what changes have occurred in what particular date range that they're looking for. So as they modify or as they move their mouse over, we can see that there's an add, modification, a deletion, etc. So all of this information can begin to pinpoint the reviewer in terms of what cells do they need to sign off on, or perhaps reject the values and send it back over to the data entry person. So that is one of our filtration tools. On cell revision history, if you remember, I talked about this. You can rubber band a particular location. We don't have a lot of information, obviously, the changes that have been made, but it will give you all the changes in that particular location or that particular cell. And if there is data entry being done over a period of days, weeks, or months, this is a very handy filtration tool because in just a few moments it can provide you that overview of all changes that have taken place either in a particular zone or simply to a particular cell. And so finally, our most advanced search tool is the AutoTrail Query Builder. You can see here you can search on multiple users, you can have multiple actions, and you can search on multiple sheets. And you can use any and all or limit that as you want. It has the same time frame criteria. Here we're searching on T. Kelly. We're searching on J. Smith, who is the person currently in the controlled workbook. When we do that search, you see we're only getting reference to T. Kelly. If we added J. Smith, you would have seen a reference to J. Smith, his login, as an example, right? And so again, actions, are being tracked based on individual users, individual locations, etc. So one example, let's say you only want to search one particular action. You can just pick whatever action you would like to go by. In this case, we'll look at modify. We'll do a search for that. We just get 2 modifications. And these, of course, are easy to find because we have a very small audit trail. But this works very efficiently even when you have thousands of rows of data because the database is designed to process quickly and send the information very quickly to the user who's requesting it. Another example is we could look for electronic signatures only. You see we have assigned records only here. When we do that search, we get simply the one electronic signature that's already been applied, but we're looking for multiple signatures tied together on a particular time frame. Easy to do, so we close that. And finally, you can load individual searches. So we have a filtration search, looking for T. Kelly and deletion. We say OK to that. We then run that search, and it gives us the 3 deletions for this particular day or this particular workbook because we have any other deletions and we haven't looked across any other time frames. But you can see how tremendously easy the AutoTrail Query Builder is to work with. And of course, once again, if there's a review process and someone needs to review data entry and see what happened, what was the values before, was there any changes, multiple changes to the same cell, and then finally leading on one particular value. An electronic audit trail like this makes your life so much more simple because you have to track this through paper printouts which don't show you anything but the final values. It can make it incredibly cumbersome. So the electronic audit trail is probably the most popular feature of eInfoTree Excel module because it minimizes time necessary to do review and approval. At the same time, for internal or external auditing capabilities, it gives the auditors a chance to do searches and retrievals of information that allows them to finish their task and move on quickly and allow you to get back to the work that you want to do. So close out of here. And then this SOP requires this review person to also sign off with an e-signature. So they, of course, have different reasons associated with them. They can put a comment or not. It's optional in terms of comments. And they can enter their individual unique user ID and password. They can again select from a range. In this case, we'll just have the whole scope range that we had before and say OK. That gets placed into the audit trail. And then where they want to insert their e-signatures. And we'll pick a signature location here. We'll say OK to that. And we wanted to make sure we change the role of the user to QA approval because they have multiple roles available to them. And they, of course, could send this back to the data entry person if they chose, or send an email back summarizing issues or concerns. And so you have ultimate flexibility in terms of doing your entry and review process. So in this case, the person is satisfied. They go ahead and accept. You can see that we now have the electronic signature for the reviewer, But now we have essentially a lock on this particular location, and once again, it doesn't have to be on this location. It can be on individual cells. It's really up to you. But bottom line, the application gives you the flexibility to lock e-signatures and to lock based on when the time is right, when the organization decides now is the time to go ahead and lock an individual cell, a range of cells, an unconnected range of cells. It doesn't matter. It's more based on when the organization decides a lock should occur. And what does it do? It provides ultimate flexibility, once again, because you can have other sheets. There's no lock on the workbook. You're just locking a particular zone. So it allows work to continue in different locations. And so this is really the end of our presentation for eInfotree Excel module. We demonstrated how easy it is to control a file and apply file-level security, to make small modifications to file-level security quickly and easily. We've shown you the audit trail in terms of its irrevocability. We've shown you how we enter data and how it's tracked in the audit trail. We've shown you how we have search and filtration tools relative to the audit trail. We've also shown you how to apply e-signatures both into the workbook, into the audit trail, but also into the workbook itself, creating unreadable e-signatures that will allow you to sidestep the issue of having to print a paper, sign off on that paper, store that paper, and then retrieve that paper for audit trails. A tremendous disadvantage to the manual use of spreadsheets. So that's it for eInfotree. I hope it's been of value to you. I'm now going to close out of eInfotree, and I'm going to take a moment to introduce you to Excel Validator. So let me go ahead and close a couple screens. So Excel Validator, once again, is that validation assistance tool. And so I'll open up an uncontrolled folder. I'm going to go into Excel Validator, and I'm going to double-click on a file and open that up. Excel Validator is a plug-in to Excel, just like eInfotree Excel module is. But what you don't have with Excel Validator, there is security other than the person, let's say, on their desktop. There's security of getting onto their desktop, where Excel Validator is available. It doesn't have an audit trail either, because this is a tool that's really designed to aid in the process of getting the spreadsheet ready for production. When it hits production, you need an application like eInfotree Excel module to control it, to provide the Part 11 tools. You don't need those Part 11 tools at this stage. That's our opinion, and we just wanted to share that with you. So what we do have, though, is we have the Excel Validator with a number of different feature sets. I always call it like Excel on steroid, because it allows you to do these deep dives, these logic analysis, these quality checks, whether it's on formula mapping, formula analysis, cell analysis, heat maps, workbook analysis, v-analysis, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of tools. I'm going to walk you through a few of them to show you how easy it is to be able to identify issues or concerns, and then document those issues or concerns. And then finally, when you're ready to provide a validation report, your IQ/OQ, we provide you with templates built into the application that make it extremely easy to move data that you've confirmed out of your validated workbook into the IQ/OQ to complete your finalization of that validation process. So once again, Excel Validator has some automation to it. It has some manual steps to it. It's part of the validation GAMP3, GAMP4, GAMP5, whatever process you're following. So let's go ahead and just look at Formula Map. Click on that. It's going to bring us up a screen. We'll just say OK to that. Basically, you see right away that we now have a legend. We're in formula mapping, so looking for inconsistencies, because consistencies we don't necessarily want to show you, but in this case, we do show you that. If I click on C13, you see here's an example. Now, that's a slightly different coloring to it, this whole row. Now, you might guess that this row is designed to sum the cell locations that are above that, right? So in this case, why is one a different color? If I look up above, I see that the actual formulae is average. Whereas if I click a cell preceding it or the cell after it, they're summing. All of them are summing. So this gives you a clear sense that there's an inconsistency here in this location, and you can correct it. And you can see that we have all the way across, there's a number of inconsistencies we've highlighted. Your workbook itself may not have that many, but when it has 1 or 10, we're going to help you get to it, identify it, see if it needs correcting, and then you can document that. So that's a little bit about formula mapping. When you want to, you simply click on the back, and that brings you back to your view. If we look at formula analysis, now here you have, just as a highlight, you have legends, so that if you're not quite clear about what it is you're trying to search on, we can view a help menu. You have these same legends which you control the coloring of, so you can work with that. And you have a number of different things relative to cells, such text cell references as an example. So if we click on the OK button, it's going to look at this sheet, and it's going to generate another legend, which is going to give us a view into, okay, so what do we see here? So I'm going to look down here at text cell references, and click on that, and let me go ahead and move out of the way so that when we highlight a cell, okay, this is a cell telling us. Once again, we're looking at a summation, but in this case, we're looking at a text cell reference. It's saying there's 3 of them. Well, there is some text right there that there should be a numeric value, not a text value. And our application is saying, wait a second, something's not quite right in this column of numbers. Yes, there's a text. It's not a number, so maybe that needs to be looked at. The same circumstance, if you move over here, of course, there's a summation coming across this direction, and that's picking up on this issue as well. And then finally, the same with this cell, which is picking up the fact that this one is somehow seeing that there's an incorrect value, and it's reporting it to this cell, and we're picking you up. So we're telling you in these 3 locations, there needs to be an adjustment. In fact, this adjustment will correct all of these. So another way that we help you in terms of a formula analysis. So let's close out of that. And then this analysis. So to the formula analysis, now we're looking at cells. And you can see like hidden cell reference or invisible cell. You can see that there's a couple cells here. There doesn't appear to be any values there, right? So we also have locked cells or unlocked cells. So when I click on that, open, it's looking at the sheet once again, and now it's telling us several things, right? So it has some invisible cells where it highlights that. So there actually is 2 values, but they're both in white font. So I couldn't see them in the naked eye. One was 220, one was 0. There was nothing visible. So being able to bring your eye to it. Another important aspect of what we're showing you here, we're identifying that these are unlocked cells because they're data entry cells. But why is there an unlocked row here when all the rest are locked? So once again, the application gives you that eyes on very quickly, identifying inconsistencies or concerns relative to your production or your soon-to-be production workbook that you're trying to validate. So we help you by identifying, and then, as I've said before a couple times, we help you to document. So let's show you how that works. Of course, you can print from the file menu, but typically that's not very easily. You have to format. You don't always get what you want. Built in to our application, we've built in, and let me recenter that again. Run that. Let me clear and go back. Close out of that screen and come back into that workbook. What I was trying to show you, we were here under cell analysis, ran the cell analysis. show you a print function that we've built into the application. So here you see the print function. And when you click on this print button, it gives you some choices in terms of how you want to print this, how you want to document it. Save it to Excel. I'm going to go to my desktop. And when it includes, it's going to open up. And what it does is it gives me a summary page where it gives information on the file that I'm working on. And legend, it provides me with that legend. But more importantly, it gives me a tab or a sheet where it shows me exactly what I was just looking at. So this is not the actual workbook we're working. This is a printout that gives you that summary and gives you the colors as well. So you can now then refer back to this as a prior documentation of an issue that's been uncovered. So in this way, we help you to document both the before and the after as much or as little as you would require as part of your validation process. So I close out of here, we'll still see the original with the line that's open, but that functionality is very helpful because you don't have to mess around with the Excel print. You're using our print functionality to document changes, concerns, fixes, etc. So finally, I'm going to finish up with a couple things. There is the heat map that gives you the summation of virtually all of the information that we just looked at here. But I wanted to touch on workbook analysis. That's a very helpful report, and then run as much or as little as you would like. And you can see here we have it broken up into sections: formula, cell, formula warnings, hidden information, and then finally structural analysis. So all of that can be documented in this particular report. I'm just going to go with formula analysis, and when we say OK to that, it's going to generate an Excel report. It's going to give us a tab and a summary. So you see here we just have some information regarding formula cells. If I want to look at that, I just click on the hot link. It gives me the complete list of formula cells. If we want to go back, we just go back to the summary. Here we have unique formulas. If that's something that's a little bit, maybe we need to take a careful look at this formula because there's something about it that the application is identifying as a unique formula. So you get the idea. This can be easily, you have once again the summary. You have a complete workbook analysis which can then be used to track the changes as you work through the validation process. So just another way that we help you with the documentation using Excel Validator. And finally, I wanted to show you an example. Here you see we have a Word document or a template, as I've said before, that you can click on that and it will generate the IQOQ documentation. So if we click on that, once again, we have structural, formula and cell, hidden information. We have it broken out into different sections because you don't necessarily need to take everything into your IQOQ. So we allow you to pick and choose what's most important in terms of your output, and when you've selected it, we extrapolate that directly from the workbook and drop it into this template. So now you can begin your final verifications without having to hassle manually moving data over or even creating the template to begin with, which is a huge hurdle for most companies. So you have these templates that can be reused over and over again. I'm not going to go to the trouble here and take your time of actually printing it, but I do want to show you an example, IQOQ. So if we open that up, an IQOQ, and this is essentially what it looks like, and it would have as many pages as the data requires. This information is all customizable for your company, your organization. You can have your colors, your logos, etc. You can control the signature pages. You can put in your own types of signature pages with titles, etc. These are just examples. You can have, of course, your own confidential and disclaimer. So the point is, all of this information in the first part of the IQOQ template is customizable based on your needs. So as an example, once again, you can just, quickly go down into, the whole, document itself. And so all of this is once again modifiable until we get down into the meat. Now, here is where we begin to control the columns themselves and what data is going to show up in those columns. So if we see here, here's our first test case named 10.1. It's in input cells. It gives test procedure, a description, a requirement. Now you have a step, a sheet name, a cell address, and an input. Now the final results can be calculated to verify, and you can list deviations, acceptance criteria, and initial as expected. And you can always take screenshots. You can add those to summary blank pages at the bottom of this document. And so as you move down through it, you'll see that the consistency of the report stays the same. And to the next test case where we're looking at output cells, and again, the same type of column configuration. And if your type of reporting off of your spreadsheet is slightly different, you can come to us and our developers, and we can help you to see if it's effectively, whether a change could occur to the way the column data are configured so that it might take data outputs from your validation spreadsheets in a slightly different way. But all of these are fixed, and you would require us to help you with that. As we pull down towards the end, we get down eventually to a signature page and then finally attachment page. So that's Excel Validator, just a snapshot of it. There's a lot more to it, but as part of the lifecycle management of spreadsheets, both a validation tool to assist you as you do your validation, and then a Part 11 control tool to help you lock down that validated spreadsheet are incredibly important in today's data integrity focused world. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Before we leave, let me bring up my information. Once again, I had closed out the actual PowerPoint, but let us provide that in case you didn't have that. Thank you very much for your time. I'll leave that up for a few moments, of course. If you haven't received information from us, this is our contact information, our website, and my direct line. So once again, Doug Crane, signing off here. Thank you so much for taking the time to let us present to you, and we look forward to your questions and interest, and at some point, hopefully, we can help you out with a business requirement. Thanks again. Take care.